The LA Thieves recently played their last two matches before the holiday break, which now locks in the final positions for the Minor 1 tournament. But before we dive into the tournament talks, I wanted to talk about the last two matches that the Thieves played, going up against the Los Angeles Gorilla Mates and the Minnesota Rocker. Their first match of the weekend was against the Los Angeles Gorilla Mates, where we did end up winning that series in a 3-1 fashion. But outside of the stats saying that we won pretty handedly, we really didn't. It was a very close matchup that realistically Gorillas could have possibly won. They started off this break 0-4, whereas the Thieves on the other side of things are 4-0. But by no means did the Gorilla Mates look bad in this series. The Thieves were actually the ones that I would say looked pretty bad in comparison to what we've seen them play before. Obviously, with us still winning the series, that's a big positive sign for the Thieves because, you know, a lot of good teams will find ways to win in situations where maybe they shouldn't. And the Thieves were finding ways to do that in this matchup. And when we look at the overview, you can see that both Ghosty and Envoy were negative, whereas Hydra and Scrap really kind of proved why they deserve to be the superstar level players, or at least being paid at that amount, because they kind of locked things in for this team throughout the entire series. And on the side of the Gorilla Mates, you had both Priesta and Skies, who really struggled. Kismet did really well throughout the entire series. He was looking like we've seen him in the past back on NYSL when they won at Champs. He was looking solid. He was picking up a lot of big time kills, just making a lot of plays. Linz looked fairly solid, I would say, as well. Obviously, basically the same KD as Kismet, but when you can't really get much going from your two ARs, that's going to make the entire series pretty difficult. And you see from the map 1, we played Rewind, which we've said in the past is typically that map that the Thieves look really good on, having only lost one hard point in general, and it was on that Rewind, but it was against FaZe, and it was very close the entire time. This go around, it was very close against the LAG team, who really hasn't been that great. So it was a little concerning, to say the least. They won 250 to 241. Again, a win is a win, so we'll take it. But I feel like this map specifically for the Thieves should not be that close to LAG. And when you look at the stat line here, everybody on the Thieves was positive besides Ghosty. Ghosty was the only one who was not, but he had 135 seconds on the hill time. That is absolutely ridiculous. And it kind of just shows that anybody can kind of take the backseat on this team. I will say that the last little while it's mostly been Ghosty. But, you know, as long as everything works out in the team cohesion, then we're all good. But on the other side of things, everybody was negative besides Linz, and he was the only one who was +3. And somehow this map was a 9-point game. I mean, the Thieves started off hot, as you can see from their breakdown chart here, and then somehow LAG kind of just got back into it, and they kept things close. They made it a lot more stressful than it needed to be, and honestly, there were a couple moments where it felt like LAG was going to be the team to close it out. But luckily, the Thieves proved that they still have the ice, and they were able to close out the map at the very end on that last hard point, which brought us to the Skyline Search and Destroy. We ended up winning the Search and Destroy 6-3, which I thought going into the series that Search and Destroy was probably still their worst game mode. I thought Control was kind of knocking on the door. They haven't looked great in Control either. But back to the Skyline, the 6-3 win is a solid win. They looked a lot more comfortable on this Search and Destroy than we've seen in some of the previous ones, and that definitely brought a little bit of confidence going into future S&Ds that we play. Envoy was the only one negative, and he was only -1, so that's really not that big of a deal. Everybody else on the Thieves was positive. Kismet and Skies, the only ones to break even and be positive on the side of the Gorilla Mates. And we see from the breakdown here, kind of back and forth a little bit. 2 wins for the Thieves, then a win for LAG, another 2 wins for the Thieves, and then it went back and forth at that point. between 2 wins for LAG and 2 wins for the Thieves to close it out. The Thieves actually lost the opening duel battle with 4 opening duels to 5, but Thieves were able to make some good plays in order to kind of counteract the loss of the first blood. So that's a really good sign for the Thieves. Obviously, ideally, we would like to get to the point where we are the ones dealing the first bloods, but if we can win 3v4 situations or 2v4 situations, just any type of man down situation, that's going to be big going into the future, because obviously you're not going to win every opening duel. So any moment that you have to kind of play low in mans or low in players and go on and win the round, that's a big sign for the future. That takes us into the third map, the Vault Control. Really not surprised to see Vault. That's kind of the only map that we've seen so far. But the Thieves ended up losing this one 3-1. And this was where it felt like if the hard point would have gone the other way, that Gorilla Mates would have had they would have had all the pressure on the Thieves. And not just because they were up 2-1, just because the Thieves would have. And this third map was where we kind of saw the Thieves fall apart a little bit. They won their opening round and then went and lost 3 rounds in a row. And doing so with almost everybody on the side of Gorilla Mates being negative besides Kismet with a plus 13. Kismet, like I said earlier, was doing so much for this team, and this map alone kind of proved what he was able to do to keep the team in the series. And that brought them to a 2-1 count, where that took us to the Skyline, and this map was way closer than it needed to be too. I mean, there's a situation here where the Thieves actually lose this 3-1 rather than win it 3-1, where they would have only won the SND. As we said before, I mean, a 9-point difference in the map 1 down to a 1-point difference in the map 4 Skyline. So very stressful. And you look here, Envoy was -12. I mean, he did have 129 seconds in the hill, which is great. Obviously, anytime you have a player who's not necessarily doing it in the kill department, you want to see it kind of showing up in different areas of the game, whether it be hill time, whether it be damage, all that kind of stuff. You want to see that happen, and thankfully, that's what happened. On top of that, Envoy had probably the biggest moment of the entire series, and it all came down to the last second of the hard point. The Thieves were tied 249. They should have closed it out. There was a whole situation that went along with it that we could break down if we really wanted to, but at the end of the day, it came down to a 1v1 on the hard point, and Envoy was able to get that kill to close down the hard point and finish out the series for us. I mean, it was very stressful at the end, but Hydra made a great play before that, killing 2 people in the back spawn, and then Envoy was the one who kind of was able to shut everything down. He got 2 kills at the end. I believe one was before he got onto the point, and then the second one was the 1v1 on the point, where whoever won was going to win the game. And, you know, Envoy iced up, and again, a team finding a way to win. That's what great teams do. On the side of LAG, everybody was negative besides Linz, who was a plus 10. And that was, I believe, the 1v1 that Envoy had in the final hard point. So that was a really, really big win out of him. We look at the flow chart here, and I mean, LAG started off in the lead. It wasn't too far gone, but you know, they started off in the lead. These were able to take it back, and then it kind of just stayed close the rest of the way. And as you can see, I mean, it's 214 to 11, 236 to 235, and then it ends 250 to 249. I mean, it was a crazy back and forth map that I really feel like it shouldn't have been, but the Thieves were able to close it out in the end. At the time, that put us to a 3-0 count on the season, and that leads us into the matchup against the Minnesota Rocker, who ended up finishing 2-2. Now, this team didn't look bad either, and this was another situation where I really felt like the Thieves could have lost their grip here and had another situation where they could have lost in a 3-1 again, but they were able to close it out once again, which is great to see. The overview for this one, we had Scrap with a plus 18, Hydra minus 10, which you don't love to see on the series. He's one of those guys you want to see him in the positive. But interesting enough, when we look at some of the hard points, he was kind of the hill time guy. He was the guy who was getting all the points for the team, which kind of threw me off a little bit. I don't know if it's maybe just kind of like a map situation thing or what, but it shocked me that he was playing more of the time than he was like going out and slaying, which was very interesting. Ghosty plus 2, and then Envoy minus 9. And then on the side of Rocker, everybody besides Estriel was positive, or at the very least break even. So something I didn't expect to see out of this matchup. You wouldn't have expected Rocker to come out and not necessarily outslay the Thieves, but kind of stay super competitive with them outside of Estriel, who was minus 14. But when you look at the red card hard point on the map 1, it was 250 to 235, a very close hard point map once again that I felt like should have been out of reach. On this map, Envoy was the only one to go negative, and when you look at the hill time here, we see Hydra was the one with the most hill time, with 98 seconds on the hill. Like I said, something you don't expect to see from him. Obviously, he went 37 and 36, which is not bad. He's getting a lot of engagements, and he's staying positive, which is great. But him being in the hill for 98 seconds is a shock to me, because he's typically the guy that will not touch the hill. But again, like I said earlier, this team proves that they are more than capable of anybody filling in any role at any time. And I think that's going to be great in the long term, because there's not going to be a set situation where it's like, hey, this guy just needs to do this. This is his role. That's it. Anybody can do anything. And that's going to be tough to beat when you're playing other teams that don't really have that same setup when it comes to their roster. And here we have the flow chart where, again, it stayed pretty parallel like the entire time. It looks like Rocker only had one short moment where they were ahead of the Thieves with a 167 to 164 score line, and then the Thieves were able to bring it back. But on this P12 here, they shot up a lot. They got a lot of points to bring it into a real close game here. But luckily the Thieves were at the point where they only needed 2 points, and Envoy made a very heads-up play. They were pushing kind of the old P3 with very little time left, and Envoy just said, you know what, I'm going to sit bottom stage, and I'm just going to wait for this rotation to move, and we'll pick up the 2 points easy, win the game that way, and that's exactly what they did. That brings us to the Map 2 Search and Destroy on Vault, where the Thieves did not look good. Compared to the last S&D that we talked about, this was like the complete opposite. Everybody on the side of Thieves was negative, with Hydra going 1-7. I believe he lost a lot of opening duels, at least the ones that he took. There were a couple situations where Scrap got picked off early. Envoy 1-7. Your sub duo having the same stat line, going 2-14 combined, really not ideal. And obviously on the side of Minnesota Rocker, everybody was positive, and Estriel and Geo were the opposite of Hydra and Envoy, basically going 8-1 apiece. So going to be really hard to win Search and Destroy maps when that's kind of the turnout that you get. 4 lost rounds in a row just to get 1 back, and then we lose the next 2. Just not great look for us. 2 opening duel wins to 5. Again, not ideal. I believe we had the opening duel win on the first round, and we still ended up losing that one. Got traded out pretty early on, and then from there, it just seemed like everything kind of, there really was no bounce back. We had a couple rounds where it was just like the Thieves got wiped off the map. Like it seemed like there wasn't really much of a fight that happened there. It wasn't a great map 2. A little concerning when it comes to the Vault Search and Destroy, because we've kind of looked pretty hit and miss on it so far. It's one of those where when we're getting first blooded a lot, it just tanks our chances of winning super, super hard. And obviously, with some of the talent that we have, we shouldn't be losing a lot of these opening gunfights. So I don't know what necessarily needs to be changed when it comes to the Vault S&D. Maybe it's just timings. They're still kind of working on that. Maybe this isn't their favorite search and destroy map. I don't know, but it did not look ideal, and hopefully we can see some work being done to that, because as of right now, Vault Search and Destroy is not a map that I'm super confident in, and I do think that we are better at S&D than we are Control, but I don't think our S&D is probably where it needs to be. But speaking of Control, we had a map 3 protocol, which I know I said it earlier that we haven't really seen anything other than Vault, but this day of matches, we actually had 2 protocols, I believe, and the Thieves were one of them. And initially, they didn't start off looking great. We went down 2-0 very quickly, and Minnesota Rocker was just looking pretty confident. Obviously, you know, when you start off 2-0, you're kind of hoping to finish it out pretty handedly in the next round after that. But when they have Nero, who is probably the best Control player in the league right now, it was pretty hard for the Thieves to shoot back originally. We can look at the Thieves stats here, and Ghosty finished positive, but to start off the first 2 rounds, Ghosty did not look very good, and he had a huge turnaround in the last 3 rounds where the Thieves ended up winning back to back to back to close it out. He pretty much just sat top blue and was able to pick off anybody and everybody that tried to either enter or was getting on the A point, whatever it was. He was just all over the place. And like I said, it was a very big turnaround from him. Hydro was the only one going negative for the Thieves with a -4 stat line. Again, not something we necessarily love to see, especially if he's not playing the time at all. But he did have some big moments where, you know, he just kind of had the other team stuck in their spawn. There was a moment from Scrap, who also I felt played pretty well for the most part, had some really big moments in the earlier rounds. In the first round that the Thieves took on offense, after the 2-0 start, he had a moment where he was on the A point and we had very, very little time left in order to get the tick to extend the time. And at that point, there was maybe 30 or less seconds on the actual game clock. And Scrap kind of chowed. He was still on the point, but he chowed out in the open and ended up dying right before the tick actually went through. And that had me stressing out a lot, because it felt like, hey, this is in the bag. You just have to stay up. We'll get the tick. Even if they push through, we'll be all good. We have an extra set of time. And somehow the Thieves were able to get back into it despite Scrap making that play to challenge off and getting picked. So I don't know how they did it exactly. The kills just seemed to fall in their way at the right time, but they were able to get a wave of kills. They ended up capping A, my apologies. And then they went on to just kind of slay out the rest of the way. A lot of these rounds ended up going more so to kills rather than time, or rather to ticks, I should say. And, you know, after that, it seemed like the Thieves kind of had a little bit more momentum on the defense. They put Rocker into the spawn trap pretty early, and it made it really, really difficult for Rocker to make their way out. They were able to close that round, and then in the last round, Thieves somehow found a way to secure a defense and basically did the same thing once again, where Ghosty was just impossible to kill in top blue, and they had him pinned in their spawn. There really wasn't much Rocker could do. So the Thieves really kind of locked it in and iced up and made some very big plays to get us going into that rewind on hardpoint. Now, this map was one that it felt like early it was going to be a little bit of a closer map, and then the Thieves kind of were able to break away a little bit. They made a couple mistakes early, and then they kind of found their footing a little bit later in the map. We win this one 250 to 184, which was what ended up closing out the series. But everybody on the Thieves was negative besides Scrap. Scrap was the only one positive with a 1.32 KD. And Ghosty was the one with the most hill time here, but everybody was kind of somewhat in the same boat. On the side of Minnesota Rocker, you had Estriel, who's the only one that went negative with a -7, but he also had 85 seconds of hill time. So, again, kind of balances out a little bit there. And then everybody else was almost even, +3, +2, and then dead even with Paul X. And you can see here the Thieves started off slow. Like I said, it was a lot closer to start it off, and then the Thieves kind of found their momentum, found their footing, and were able to kind of launch ahead a little bit and really showed what they're capable of on this rewind map. There was a moment in the first set of rotations where the Thieves just kind of let some things get by them that I felt like were things that they wouldn't normally let slide, and it just kind of slipped their mind. Maybe I don't know, but they were able to lock it down in the second set of rotations to where they didn't make the same mistake twice. They learned from it in the moment, and it was a mistake that I felt like they wouldn't. Scrap and Ghosty were both feeling pretty sick. Different parts of the team were feeling pretty sick. I believe Sender was one of them as well. So, maybe they're just not in the right state of mind right now, having to deal with the sickness and trying to play on that. I can only imagine the type of brain fog that you feel when you're trying to play Call of Duty at this level while sick. I mean, it's got to be insane. But, despite how poorly they played in certain situations, they were still able to close out both of their series where they didn't look great. So, not for the sickness thing to be an excuse, but it should be interesting to see how the Thieves kind of handle when they come back from break, when everybody's all locked in and everybody's feeling better and all that kind of stuff. It should be interesting, especially because we start off with the minor that I talked about earlier. And this is the setup for the minor tournament. Now, if you guys watched my video earlier in the year talking about kind of how this minor major system works this year, because it's something they've never done before, then you would know that this is a single elimination bracket. So the Thieves, because they were the second seed, Royal Ravens were the number 1 seed actually, which I believe is only based off of there was a one map count difference. I don't know if it was Thieves lost one more map than the Ravens did, or if the Ravens just won one more map than the Thieves did. But either way, the map count was just slightly different in favor of the Ravens. That's why they get the number 1 seed. The Thieves got the 2 seed, Ultra 3, and then Breach 4. Then we go into the pre-quarterfinals. So from here, once these matches start, whoever loses is out of the tournament. So my guess for the minor for us is I think FaZe is probably going to beat Heretics. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if Heretics find a way to beat FaZe, because Heretics haven't looked horrible. They've had their moments. They've had their bright spots for sure. But FaZe has not looked very good. So far, the only win on the season for FaZe is the Falcons. That's not a great look. On top of that, the only respawn that the Falcons have won all season was against FaZe. So FaZe isn't looking great. I don't know if that's going to stay the case for the rest of the season. I think FaZe is going to find it, and they're going to start to pick it up. So that's why I think I could see FaZe coming in and playing the Thieves. And if the Thieves aren't on their A game, they could lose to FaZe in the second round after their first round bye. But if they were to win that, they move on to the semifinals. If they win that, that's the grand finals. And again, because it's a one and done, there's no lower bracket. So whoever kind of makes the run here, which I'm expecting it to be Ultra, because Ultra has looked pretty solid so far. I mean, we only have 3 teams that are 4-0, and it's the Ravens, it's the Thieves, and it's Ultra. So I could see this bracket kind of being Ravens, Optic, Thieves, Ultra, and then, from there it gets a little mixy. I could see Ravens beating Optic. I could see Optic beating Ravens. I mean, it's gonna be a really good tournament to watch. And I know some people don't love the fact that it is a single elimination, but it's just a minor tournament. You know, it's not supposed to be the same as the major. It's online, so there's probably gonna be some complications or some cheese that goes on, so to speak. But I think it'll be fun. It'll be a lot more engaging than just watching the regular season matches. There's a lot more at stake. So I'm personally really excited for this. Once this is done, we jump back into the regular season matches where the Thieves, I believe, will only have like 3 more matches to go before we get to the major tournament. So, you know, really not too much going on left here in the rest of this, I would say, first split once we get back from the holiday break. With that being said, I'm really excited to see how the Thieves finish out this split. Obviously, we have the holiday break coming up, and once we get back, we have this minor tournament that we broke down a little bit, and we will have a couple more matches before we go into the major tournament that's going to be taking place in Barcelona. I would love to see the Thieves come out hot with a minor victory. That would be really cool to see since it's the first one ever being done. And, you know, we'll see how the seeding goes when it comes to the major. So, really excited for all of that. Let me know what you guys think for the rest of this stage. And if you enjoyed the video, please hit that like and subscribe button. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace.